And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and this is Ebon Praetor Thrull Tribal. So this is another winner of one of my polls. It was my original creatures that I think should be commanders video. So basically that was a bunch of creatures that weren't legendary that I thought should be legendary, which of course would qualify them to become commanders, but also ones that I thought actually made interesting build arounds. And Ebon Praetor came out on top in that poll, and I'm sort of glad that it did, because I really think that this should be a legendary creature, and it's definitely a very interesting build around. So Ebon Praetor for black, Avatar Praetor. And again, I don't know how many Avatar Praetors there are in the game, but there can't be too many. It's a 5/5 with first strike and trample. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a -2/-2 counter on Ebon Praetor. That's right, a -2/-2 counter. A lot of unique things going on this card. Sacrifice a creature, remove a -2/-2 counter from Ebon Praetor. If the sacrifice creature was a Thrall, put a +1/+0 counter on Ebon Praetor. Activate only during your upkeep and only once each turn. So there's so many unique things going on with this card. First of all, first strike and trample is sort of a weird combination that you don't see much, and it's very significant. I'll get back to it though. You're putting -2/-2 counters on it, which of course not a lot of cards have that. You can sacrifice a creature to remove that counter, but you can only do that during your upkeep and only once each turn. So essentially you get the counter at the beginning of your upkeep, and then immediately afterwards, you're going to sacrifice a creature to remove it. And if the sacrifice creature was a Thrall, you're going to put that not often seen +1/+0 counter on Ebon Praetor. So it's going to become a 6/5. And of course, when your creature has first strike and trample, increasing the power incrementally like that is a lot better. So obviously we want to be playing a lot of Thralls in this deck, right? This is why it's sort of a Thrall tribal, and there is a lot of Thralls in the game. I didn't include all of them in this deck. I just included the ones that were Thralls but also could help us out, like Blood Vassal and Thrall Surgeon. Blood Vassal we can sack to get a ritual effect. There's actually a few of these in the deck that are ritual effects. Thrall Surgeon's great because you can pay 1 and a black, sacrifice Thrall Surgeon, look at target player's hand and choose a card from it. That player discards that card, activate only as a sorcery. So we can just use it. If we know maybe one of our opponents has a card that we really don't want them to have, we can just use this for that effect rather than sacrificing it to our commander. Thrall Champion and Thrall Wizard are both really interesting. Thrall Champion's actually a lord for Thralls. Thrall creatures get +1/+1. So that's definitely going to be helpful. Also, you can tap it to gain control of target Thrall for as long as you control Thrall Champion. It's unlikely that our opponents are going to create any Thralls. However, it does affect changelings, so that's important. If our opponents have changelings, we can gain control of them. Thrall Wizard is a really interesting one. 2 and a black, 1/1. Thrall Wizard. Very interesting that its name is the exact same as its creature type. You don't see that too often. You pay 1 and a black, counter target black spell unless its controller pays an additional 1 black or 3 colorless. So there's a couple interesting things going on here. First of all, you're countering stuff in black, which is great. Only black spells, but that's a pretty popular color in Commander, so there's definitely going to be some players at the table that are probably playing black. They have to play an additional black, which they probably will, but I guess if they don't have any untapped black mana, they have to pay the 3 colorless. But also we can use this ability a few times, right? You can pay the 2, then pay the 2 again, then pay the 2 again, and ensure that your opponent isn't going to be able to cast that black spell. So this actually can be a very usable card in the deck, right? I wanted to have Thralls that actually had abilities that we could use. We're just not going to necessarily be sacking them to our commander. Mindstab Thrall and Neckrite are both great. They're both 1 black, 2/2 Thralls. And Mindstab Thrall, when it attacks and isn't blocked, you can sacrifice it and defending player discards 3 cards. Wow, that's brutal. And Neckrite, when it attacks and isn't blocked, we can sacrifice it to destroy target creature defending player controls. Can't be regenerated. So both very usable abilities, but again, we can just sacrifice them to our commander if we want. The best ones though, probably Breeding Pit and Endrixar. Endrixar just makes Thrall tokens. For anyone who doesn't know, it's a great card in any deck where you want to be sacrificing stuff because it's constantly creating those tokens, but they are Thrall tokens. So that's going to be obviously a perfect fit in the deck. And Breeding Pit, 3 and a black enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Breeding Pit unless you pay black and a black. And at the beginning of your end step, create an 0/1 black Thrall creature token. So this is just going to give us that Thrall token that we need every single turn to sacrifice to our commander. And I particularly like that it is at the beginning of the end step, so we're going to get it right away. And obviously we can also use changelings. I got Venomous Changeling in here. Grave Shifter's good because we are going to be sacrificing our creatures a lot so we can get them back. Of course, I also put Maskwood Nexus in the deck because now we can just make all of our creatures Thralls, which is going to be great. Also, we can pay 3 and create that 2/2 blue Shapeshifter creature token with Changeling that we can then sacrifice to our commander, right? This is essentially just going to be our commander has an upkeep of 3 mana. Don't forget though, we are adding that +1/+0 counter, and that is cumulative. Essentially, when you sacrifice that creature, you're going to remove the -2/-2 counter that you just put on. So your commander is going to remain a 5/5. But if you're continually sacking Thrall tokens, the +1/+0 counter sticks around. So it's going to be a 6/5, then the next turn it's going to be a 7/5, then the next turn it's going to be an 8/5. So that's going to add up. I also got Tevesh Zat, Doom of Fools, and Soul Exchange in the deck. I don't put Planeswalkers in a lot of my decks. I'm not a big fan, but he's creating 2 0/1 black Thrall creature tokens. That's just fantastic, of course, in this deck. He also has that ability where you can sacrifice another creature or Planeswalker. If you do, draw 2 cards, then draw another card if the sacrificed permanent was a commander. We're not going to be sacrificing our commander to this, but we do have a lot of other sacrifice fodder in the deck, so that definitely fits. And Soul Exchange is just perfect. As an additional cost to cast a spell, exile a creature you control, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, put a +2/+2 counter on it if the creature exiled was a Thrall. And for only 2 black mana, that's fantastic, obviously. On top of the fact that we have lots of Thralls. So even if this is our commander, like say our commander dies, we can now sacrifice one of our Thralls, put our commander back into play, and it gets a +2/+2 counter on it. Now it's a 7/7. Fantastic fit in the deck. As I said, the First Strike and Trample is a very unique combination you don't see much. And the ability that absolutely goes perfectly with First Strike and Trample is Deathtouch. Deathtouch is a phenomenal ability with First Strike and a phenomenal ability with Trample. It goes great with First Strike because your creature is going to deal the damage first, and any damage it deals to the blocking creature is going to immediately kill it. So even if your opponent is throwing a 10/10 creature in the way, your commander is going to kill it before it does any damage. And Trample is fantastic with Deathtouch because you only have to deal as much damage as it was required to kill that creature, and then the rest is trample damage. And with Deathtouch, you only need to deal 1 damage to that creature. So basically, whatever creature our opponent throws in the way, again, our opponent throws a 10/10 creature in our way, we deal 1 damage to that creature, that's enough to kill it, and then we trample over for the rest, which seems really odd that our opponents are throwing a huge creature in our way and we only have to deal 1 damage and then we still are trampling over for a bunch. But that is how it works, and that's why Deathtouch is so fantastic with First Strike and Trample. So we want to be giving our commander Deathtouch as much as possible. Falthus is going to be super good in this deck. Commanders you control have Menace and Deathtouch. So again, now we're doing the Deathtouch thing and then the Menace on top of it. So now our commander is going to be incredibly hard to block. If our opponent decides to throw 2 creatures in the way, they're both going to die, and our commander is going to trample over for trample damage. Gift of Doom, also really, really great in this deck. 4 and a black aura enchant creature. Enchanted creature has Deathtouch and Indestructible. So obviously the Indestructible part is also a nice little bonus. We want our commander to stay on the table. Also has that morph, sacrifice another creature. So we can just pay 3, play this face down, and then sacrifice our creatures, which we want to be doing in this deck anyway, and then attach it to our commander. Quietus Spike and Vorpal Sword are going to be fantastic in this deck. Quietus Spike is going to give our commander Deathtouch, but also when a creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses half their life rounded up. This is really going to speed things up for us again, and we're going to be dealing damage to our opponents very easily if our commander has First Strike, Trample, and Deathtouch. I mean, even if our commander is just a 5/5, our opponent would need to throw 5 different creatures in the way in order for us not to do damage to them, right? That's how great of a combination those abilities are. Vorpal Sword, a new card from Forgotten Realms, is just a fantastic fit in this deck. 1 mana artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has Deathtouch. Fantastic. Now our commander is going to be a 7/5 or even bigger and have that Deathtouch, but also you can pay 5 black until end of turn. Vorpal Sword gains whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game, right? So again, this is like a win con. We're already in a Voltron strategy here, but this is just going to really speed things up. And then I threw Kumbaj Witches in this deck. Black and a black human wizard, 1/3, tap. Kumbaj Witches deals 1 damage to any target and 1 damage to any target of an opponent's choice. Just because we have a lot of Deathtouch features in this deck, I thought we could throw one of them on our Kumbaj Witches, and if we can want to play a little bit of politics, obviously, we can just kill one of our opponent's creatures, and then if we can play some politics here, we can get another one out of the way as well. So I think it's a good fit in the deck. Obviously, our creatures are going to be dying lots. So Dictate of Erebos, Grave Pact, right? It's fairly obvious now where you want to go with this. The my creatures are dying all the time theme, aristocrats essentially, kind of. You know, I wouldn't say aristocrats necessarily, but the typical cards that you see in a deck like this would definitely go in this deck. Dark Prophecy and Erebos, Black Hearted are great. I really like Dark Prophecy for me because whenever a creature you control dies, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. That's not non-token. Most of these effects are non-token. This is any creature you control dying. So even if we sacrifice tokens, we get to draw. Erebos, same thing. Whenever another creature you control dies, you may pay 2 life if you do draw cards. So that's also token creatures, and it also has the ability to sacrifice creatures, which I like. Having other sack outlets in the deck is good. You can just pay 1 and a black, sacrifice another creature, and target creature gets -2/-1 till end of turn. Pawn of Ulamog, Pitiless Plunderer, right? I mean, this is the obvious stuff that you're going to be putting in any deck like this. Ophiomancer's fantastic, Bastion of Remembrance. Ophiomancer is just going to guarantee we get that black snake token on our turn. If we don't have any Thrulls kicking around, we can just use that on our upkeep to sacrifice to our commander's ability. Bastion of Remembrance is also going to give us a token that we can sacrifice to our commander's ability, and also has that drain effect. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. This is the only effect like that I put in the deck. You could put more. I particularly like this one because, first of all, we're more concerned about our creatures dying because we're guaranteed going to have a creature dying every turn. It drains all of our opponents, not just one. Also, it's a enchantment, so it's not going to be removed so easily. There can be situations, though, where we miss that upkeep ability, right? Maybe we don't have another creature in play, and at the beginning of our upkeep, we're going to get a -2/-2 counter on our Ebon Praetor, and then because we can only activate that sacrifice ability only once each turn, if our commander gets that -2/-2 counter, we can't get it off, right? Because the next upkeep, it's going to get another one, and then we can only remove one of them, so it's still going to have the first one. However, we can remove it in other ways, like Feign the Broker. He's absolutely fantastic in this deck. He's fantastic in a lot of decks. You know, like I've said, I don't think he's really a fantastic commander. He's an interesting build around for sure. I think he goes in a ton of decks, though, because he's doing so much. He has that first ability, sacrifice a creature, put 2+1/+1 counters on target creature. That's pretty great in this deck. We can just sacrifice one of our creatures that we want to sacrifice anyway to put 2 counters on our commander and make it bigger. But more importantly, he has tap, remove a counter from a creature you control, create a treasure token. So now we don't even have to sacrifice a creature. We have our Feign the Broker in play. Our Ebon Praetor gets that -2/-2 counter on it, and we can just turn it into a treasure token. So we almost want our commander now to be putting counters on itself so we can get treasure tokens out of it. I also put Hex Parasite in the deck as well for the same reason. Just a 1 mana artifact creature, insect 1/1, and you can pay X and a Phyrexian black mana. Remove up to X counters from target permanent. For each counter removed this way, Hex Parasite gets +1/+0 until end of turn. This is really a fantastic card that I think you could almost put in any deck. You know, it kills planeswalkers for starters, right? Your opponent's got a planeswalker in play with 3 loyalty counters on it. You can pay 3 and a black Phyrexian mana, so 2 life if you want. Just pay 3 mana and you've now killed that planeswalker. Your Hex Parasite also gets +3/+0 until end of turn, which is also good, but you can just use this to remove counters from your opponent's stuff. We can also remove counters from our commander, right? That's why it's essentially in the deck. We can just pay 1 and a black, remove remove that -2/-2 counter off of our commander if we want to. We're playing a Voltron strategy here a little bit, maybe a lot, I don't know. You can go more of a Voltron theme if you want to. I thought the sacrifice theme was a little more important. I definitely put some Voltron pieces in here. Obviously I got lightning greaves and I got some swords and stuff like that. Voltron pieces can always be increased or decreased. You can put the ones in you like. Renegade's Getaway, I think, is an absolute perfect fit in this deck, right? We got to protect our commander, and this is a fantastic way to do it. In black, right? There's not a lot of effects like this in mono black. 2 and a black, instant. Target permanent gains indestructible until end of turn. Create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. So this is a permanent. It really is a fairly unique effect. You can protect any permanent with this. We can protect our enchantments or our artifacts, anything. Probably we're going to use it our commander, and then the added bonus is we get that colorless servo artifact creature token that we can then sacrifice to one of our sacrifice effects, right? Perfect fit in this deck. So that is my Ebon Praetor Commander deck tech. And again, it's not an actual legendary creature, obviously. The whole idea here is talk to your play group, see if they're okay with it. I can't imagine they wouldn't be. I mean, it's a 6-mana 5/5. It's certainly not overpowered. It's interesting. It's unique. If your play group will allow it, take this deck list, which is in the description below, and run with it. Have some fun. But that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.